Hi, my name is Sandra. I'm 32 years old, and when I look back at my life, I still can't believe what I went through. Imagine this. You're standing at your husband's funeral, barely able to breathe, your heart shattered into pieces. And instead of holding your hand, the one person you thought you could trust, your own sister, starts circling like a vulture. I was drowning in grief, yet she was already planning to take everything my husband left behind. What happened next changed me forever. Before I dive into everything that happened, I want to pause here and connect with you. If you're watching or listening right now, I'd love for you to let me know in the comments where you're from, what country, what city. I truly want to thank you personally for being here with me and supporting stories like mine. And if you've ever been through something where family turned against you at your lowest, then stick with me, because I promise this story will not only shock you, it will remind you that even in betrayal and heartbreak, there is a way to rise stronger than ever. Growing up, Angela and I weren't the closest sisters, but we weren't enemies either. We had the usual sibling spats, arguments over clothes, jealousy over attention, fights over who got the bigger slice of cake at birthdays. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if those childhood moments planted seeds of rivalry in her heart, seeds that grew into something darker as we got older. I was the younger sister, the one who people often described as the responsible one. Angela was wild, free-spirited, and always chasing something new. She had dreams that changed every month. One day she wanted to be a singer, the next a fashion designer, then a traveler who would see the whole world. I admired her courage to chase after possibilities, but I also saw how quickly she gave up when things didn't go her way. When I met Daniel in college, everything shifted for me. He was calm, steady, and kind, the exact opposite of Angela's whirlwind energy. I fell for him slowly, in the way that builds a foundation strong enough to last forever. He wasn't flashy, but he was dependable. He wasn't loud, but his quiet presence filled every room. And the best part? He loved me not for who I pretended to be, but for who I really was. Angela noticed him too, of course. She always noticed men who had something solid about them, maybe because stability was the one thing she could never hold on to herself. She flirted with him in the beginning, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, brushing his arm in ways that made me uncomfortable. Daniel never encouraged it. If anything, he would politely excuse himself whenever she tried to get too close. Still, those moments lingered in my mind like a shadow. When Daniel proposed to me, Angela was the first one I told. Her reaction was strange. She forced a smile, hugged me too tightly, and whispered, "You're so lucky, Sandra." At the time, I brushed it off as surprise, but now looking back, I think envy had already taken root. Life with Daniel was everything I had hoped for. We built a modest but beautiful home. We laughed often and we dreamed of the future. When we found out I was pregnant, we cried tears of joy. It felt like everything I had ever wanted was falling into place. Angela visited during my pregnancy, bringing little gifts and pretending to be excited, but I could sense something off. Sometimes she would place her hand on my belly and say things like, "This baby is so lucky. If only I had a life like yours." Her words were laced with something I couldn't quite identify at the time, but now I know. It was longing, mixed with resentment. Then tragedy struck. Daniel fell ill suddenly. It started as fatigue, then grew into something worse. Within months, I went from planning our child's nursery with him to sitting by his hospital bed, holding his hand, and whispering promises I didn't know how to keep. When he passed, it was as if the ground beneath me had vanished. I was 29 years old, widowed, and carrying his child. Angela swooped in quickly. At first, she seemed supportive. She stayed with me for a few days, helped with groceries, even rocked the baby to sleep when she was born. But slowly, her true intentions began to reveal themselves. She started making comments about how difficult it would be for me to raise a child alone. "Sandra," she said one evening, her voice soft but sharp, "maybe it would be better if I took the baby. You're grieving. You're tired. I can give her a better life." I was stunned. I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but her eyes told me she wasn't. She pressed further, talking about how Daniel would have wanted the baby raised in stability, how she had the energy and time that I didn't. Then her focus shifted to Daniel's estate. She began asking invasive questions. Did he leave a will? How much money did he leave behind? Don't you think I deserve some of it since I was his sister-in-law? That was when I realized Angela wasn't here to help me. She was here to take everything I had left. My husband's memory, my daughter's future, my security. She wanted it all. Those early days after Daniel's death were already some of the darkest of my life, and Angela's betrayal felt like salt in the wound. I had lost my partner, and now I was on the verge of losing the very things that kept his memory alive. It was a test I never wanted, but one I had no choice but to face. And that's where this story truly begins. Because instead of letting Angela strip me of everything, I found a strength inside myself I didn't know existed. A strength that would carry me through every painful confrontation, every courtroom battle, and every sleepless night. A strength that would eventually lead to healing, not just for me, but for my daughter as well. After Daniel's passing, life became a blur of responsibilities, grief, and exhaustion. I woke up every morning not because I wanted to, but because my newborn daughter needed me. Every cry reminded me of both the beauty and the weight of motherhood. I loved her more than words could ever describe, but in those first few months, I often wondered how I would ever manage without Daniel. He had been my partner in every sense, and now I was left to carry the weight alone. It was during this fragile period that Angela began to tighten her grip. What had first seemed like sisterly concern soon morphed into something invasive and unsettling. She visited often, too often. At first, I thought she just wanted to help, but her words and actions told another story. "Sandra, you're not eating enough," she would say, shaking her head. "The baby needs someone stronger than you." Or, "You look exhausted. Why don't you let me take her for a while? Maybe permanently. You know I'd be a good mother." Her persistence grew sharper by the day. She started asking to keep the baby overnight, insisting it was for my own good. But my gut twisted every time she reached out for my daughter. It didn't feel like love. It felt like possession. The real breaking point came one evening when Angela brought up the subject of Daniel's estate. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through bills and legal papers, trying to figure out how to keep the lights on and the mortgage paid. Angela leaned across the table, her tone suddenly businesslike. "You know," she said, "Daniel would have wanted me to be taken care of, too. I was his family, after all. Don't you think it's only fair that I get a portion of what he left behind?" I froze. "Angela, that money is for his daughter, for her future, not for anyone else." Her face hardened, the mask of concern slipping away. "Sandra, you're being selfish. You can't raise her alone. You're young, inexperienced, and grieving. You don't even know what you're doing. If you really cared about her, you'd hand her over to someone who can give her more than you ever could." The audacity of her words cut deeper than any blade. My grief had already left me vulnerable, but Angela's betrayal was something else entirely. She wasn't just challenging my ability to mother my child, she was trying to erase me from my own daughter's life. I started noticing more disturbing patterns. Angela would drop by unannounced, sometimes letting herself in with the spare key she had once borrowed and never returned. I'd find her holding my baby without asking, rocking her as though she were her own. She even began introducing herself to neighbors and acquaintances, as if she had a more significant role than just being the aunt. "This is my little girl," she once said at the grocery store when she came shopping with us. My heart pounded with shock, and I immediately corrected her, but the damage was done. She was already trying to blur boundaries. Friends started noticing too. One close friend pulled me aside and whispered, "Sandra, your sister. She acts like she's the mother. Are you okay with that?" I wanted to scream that I wasn't, but admitting it out loud made it feel even more real, and I wasn't ready for that. The tension reached a boiling point one night when Angela stayed over. I had put the baby to bed, exhausted after a long day. When I went to check on her a few hours later, the crib was empty. Panic shot through my body like electricity. I ran through the house, calling my daughter's name, until I found Angela in the guest room, rocking her to sleep. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling. Angela looked up calmly, almost smugly. "She cries when you hold her, but look how peaceful she is with me, don't you see? I'm better for her." That was the night I realized I couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. My sister wasn't just overstepping. She was actively trying to take my daughter away from me. And worse, she believed she had every right to do so. As if that weren't enough, Angela started spreading rumors among family members. She told relatives that I was too depressed to be a good mother, that I was unstable, and that the baby would be better off with her. At first, some family members dismissed her words, but others began questioning me with concerned looks and subtle comments. "Are you sure you're okay, Sandra? Maybe Angela can help more than you're letting her." I felt cornered in my own life. It was as though grief had not only stolen my husband, but also opened the door for my sister to invade every remaining piece of stability I had left. But the worst betrayal was still to come. One afternoon, I discovered Angela had contacted a lawyer. She hadn't just thought about taking my daughter, she was trying to make it legal. She claimed that I was unfit to parent due to emotional distress and financial instability. I was stunned. My own sister was trying to use the courts to strip me of custody of my own child. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. In fact, she seemed almost proud. "I told you this was for the best. Daniel would have wanted her to have a good life, and you can't give her that. But I can." I remember standing there, holding my daughter tightly against my chest, my hands trembling but my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "Angela, you will never take her from me, over my dead body." For the first time, I saw something flash across her face. Not guilt, not shame, but pure determination. It scared me more than anything else, because I realized then that this wasn't just about money or attention, this was about control. Angela wanted to rewrite the story of my life, to take the family I had built with Daniel and claim it as her own. That was when the fight truly began. Angela's attempt to use the courts to take my daughter away from me was like a slap across the face. Until then, I had thought, naively, that she was just overstepping, that maybe grief had driven her to act irrationally. But when I saw the legal papers, when I realized she had truly set out to paint me as an unfit mother, my perspective shifted entirely. This was no longer about family misunderstandings. This was war. The first step was finding my own lawyer. Walking into that office, clutching the stack of documents Angela had filed, I felt like a frightened child. My hands shook, my heart pounded, and for a moment I wondered if Angela had been right, if maybe I really wasn't strong enough to do this alone. But then my baby stirred in my arms, her tiny hand curling around my finger, grounding me. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for her. The lawyer, a kind but firm woman named Marissa, read through Angela's claims with narrowed eyes. She's accusing you of being mentally unfit, financially unstable, and emotionally incapable of raising your child, she explained. But from what I see, she doesn't have a strong case. These are just words. We can fight this. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Still, I knew Angela wouldn't back down easily. She was determined, and determination mixed with obsession is a dangerous combination. When I returned home, I decided it was time to confront Angela directly. No more sidestepping. No more pretending everything was okay. I called her and told her to meet me at the house. When she arrived, she carried herself with the air of someone who believed she was already winning. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Angela, I know about the lawyer. I know you're trying to take my daughter from me." Her expression didn't falter. Instead, she gave me a tight smile. "Sandra, you should thank me. I'm doing what's best for her. One day, you'll understand that." The arrogance in her tone made my blood boil. What's best for her is being with her mother, the one who carried her, birthed her, and loves her more than life itself. "You will never replace me." Angela's eyes hardened. "We'll see what the judge thinks." Her words cut deep, but they also lit a fire within me. I realized then that Angela wasn't going to stop. She wasn't going to wake up one morning and suddenly come to her senses. She was going to push until she got what she wanted, or until I pushed back harder. That night, as I rocked my daughter to sleep, I made myself a promise. I would fight with everything I had. I wouldn't let Angela bully me into giving up, and I wouldn't let my grief or exhaustion blind me to the strength I still carried inside. From that day forward, I became more deliberate. I started documenting everything. Every visit, every strange comment, every time she tried to insert herself into my role as mother. I kept records of her unannounced visits, of the things she said to neighbors, even the way she introduced herself in public. Marissa told me it could all become evidence if the case escalated, and I wasn't taking any chances. At the same time, I began reaching out for support. For weeks, I had isolated myself, too ashamed and too tired to admit what was happening. But now I needed allies. I called friends, explained the situation, and asked them to be witnesses to Angela's behavior. Many of them had already noticed her overstepping, and they didn't hesitate to back me up. Some even offered to write statements describing what they had seen. The more I gathered support, the more empowered I felt. Slowly, I began to reclaim my voice, my strength, and my authority as a mother. Angela wasn't the only one who could play this game. The confrontation reached another level when Angela showed up one afternoon with shopping bags full of baby clothes and toys. At first, it seemed innocent until she began unpacking them and placing them in the nursery without asking me. "Angela, stop," I said firmly. She didn't even look up. "I bought these for my baby. She deserves nice things." My heart pounded. "She's not your baby, Angela. She's mine. And if you keep saying otherwise, you won't be welcome here anymore." That finally got her attention. She turned to me, her eyes blazing. "Don't threaten me, Sandra. You're too weak to handle this on your own. Everyone knows it. Even the court will see it. You'll thank me one day when she's living a better life with me." I stood my ground, even though my knees shook. "Get out, Angela, right now." She left, slamming the door behind her, but not before muttering, "This isn't over." And I knew she meant it. From then on, every interaction with her was a battle. She tried to manipulate me with guilt, insisting I was being unfair, ungrateful, even cruel. She tried to sway family members to her side, spreading lies about me being too depressed or irresponsible. But the more she pushed, the more I realized just how dangerous her obsession had become, and just how much I had to protect not only my daughter, but myself. At one point, Angela even threatened to move into the house. "Daniel would have wanted me here," she said, as if his memory was a weapon she could wield against me. "He wouldn't want his daughter raised in a broken home." That was the moment I finally cut her off completely. I changed the locks, blocked her number, and told her she was no longer welcome in my life. It was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made, cutting off my own sister. But I knew it was the only way to protect my daughter and my peace. Of course, Angela didn't take it well. She doubled down on her legal threats, and the custody battle loomed over me like a storm cloud. But by then, I had built a foundation of strength and support. I wasn't the same woman who had crumbled under grief weeks earlier. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to fight. The confrontation had changed me. It had forced me to face my fears, to find courage in places I didn't know existed. And though the battle wasn't over yet, I knew one thing for certain. Angela had underestimated me. She thought grief had broken me. But grief had also awakened a strength I never knew I had, and I was ready to use it. The weeks following my decision to cut Angela off were some of the most turbulent of my life. For the first time since Daniel's death, I felt a sense of control, but that sense was fragile, constantly threatened by Angela's relentless determination. Cutting her off didn't stop her, it only enraged her. At first, she resorted to phone calls and emails. My phone would light up at all hours of the day with messages that swung wildly between desperate pleading and searing accusations. One moment, she'd write, "Please, Sandra, you're making a mistake. I only want what's best for her." The next, it would be, "You'll regret this. Everyone will see what a failure you are." Blocking her gave me a temporary reprieve, but Angela found other ways. She began showing up at places I frequented, the grocery store, the pediatrician's office, even church. At first I thought it was coincidence, but after the third chance encounter, I knew better. She was watching me, tracking my movements, inserting herself into my life whether I wanted her there or not. The pressure began to weigh on me. Nights became sleepless, filled with anxious thoughts and nightmares. I'd jolt awake at every creak in the house, convinced Angela was outside plotting her next move. Sometimes, I'd walk into the nursery just to make sure my daughter was still there, safe and sound. Marissa, my lawyer, advised me to document these encounters too. "If she's harassing you, we can use that in court," she said. "The more evidence we have, the stronger your case." So I wrote everything down: the time, the place, what Angela said or did. I even started carrying a small recorder in my bag, just in case. It felt extreme, but I knew I couldn't underestimate her anymore. The turning point came one rainy afternoon when Angela showed up at my doorstep again. I had just put the baby down for a nap when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw her standing there, soaked from the rain, but with that same determined look in her eyes. I didn't want to open the door, but something in me said it was time. I needed to face her, not hide. So I cracked it open, leaving the chain locked. "Angela, you need to stop this," I said firmly. "You're not welcome here." Her expression shifted into something almost pleading. "Sandra, please don't shut me out. You're grieving. You don't know what you're doing. Let me help you. Let me take care of her." My patience snapped. "No, Angela, this isn't about helping. This is about control. You want to replace me, and I will never let that happen." For the first time, Angela's mask cracked. Her voice rose, sharp and venomous. "You don't deserve her. You're weak, Sandra. Everyone sees it. Daniel saw it too. That's why he leaned on me. He knew you couldn't handle it." Her words sliced through me like knives. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Was that true? Did Daniel really believe I wasn't strong enough? But then I looked back at the tiny form sleeping in the nursery behind me, and I felt the weight of the love I carried for her. No one could take that from me. Not even Angela. "You're wrong," I whispered, though my voice trembled. "Daniel trusted me. He chose me, and I will raise our daughter, no matter what it takes." Angela's eyes narrowed. "Then I'll make sure you lose everything." That was when I slammed the door shut, locked it, and collapsed against it, shaking. I knew then that this was more than just a family dispute. Angela wasn't going to stop until she either had my daughter or destroyed me in the process. That night, I called Marissa and told her everything. "We need to escalate this," I said. "I need to protect myself and my baby before it's too late." Marissa agreed. She helped me file for a restraining order, gathering all the evidence I had collected. It was a terrifying step. I knew it would only enrage Angela further, but it was necessary. I couldn't live in fear any longer. When Angela was served with the papers, her reaction was explosive. She called mutual family members, painting me as a villain who was tearing the family apart. She claimed I was alienating her, that I was unstable, paranoid, even cruel. Some relatives sided with her, believing her lies. Others quietly supported me but didn't want to get involved. It hurt deeply to see my family divided, but I reminded myself of my priority, my daughter's safety. The restraining order gave me some relief, but Angela wasn't finished. She doubled down on her custody case, pushing harder through the courts. Suddenly, my life became a whirlwind of legal documents, hearings, and preparations. Every day felt like a battle, every moment like a test of my resilience. But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. I found strength I didn't know I had. I began to carry myself differently, no longer shrinking under Angela's shadow. I spoke with clarity and conviction in court, presenting the evidence I had gathered. I leaned on the support of friends who stood by me, their testimonies backing up my story. Slowly, the tide began to shift, and then came the real turning point. One afternoon, while reviewing documents, Marissa looked up at me with a rare smile. "Sandra, we've got her. Her own statements combined with the harassment evidence paint a clear picture. This isn't about your fitness as a mother. It's about her obsession. The judge will see that." Hearing those words felt like the first ray of sunlight after a long, stormy night. For the first time, I truly believed I could win, not just in court, but in reclaiming my life. The battle wasn't over, but I knew the momentum had shifted. Angela had underestimated me. She thought I was broken, weak, easy to manipulate. But in trying to take everything from me, she had awakened a part of me I didn't even know existed. I was no longer just surviving. I was fighting back, and I was ready to win. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm I'd been dreading and anticipating all at once. My nerves were a tangled mess, but underneath the anxiety, there was a thread of resolve that hadn't been there before. I wasn't the same woman who had cowered behind closed doors, praying Angela would go away. I was stronger now, hardened by months of fighting, and I was ready to stand up, not just for myself, but for my daughter. Walking into the courthouse, I felt my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The building smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant, its tall ceilings making me feel small, but I refused to shrink. I carried my baby's picture in my purse, a silent reminder of why I was there. Angela was already seated at the other side of the room when I entered. She looked polished and calm, dressed in a sharp suit with her hair perfectly styled, as though she'd stepped out of a magazine. If someone didn't know the full story, they might think she was the responsible one, the better choice. That was Angela's gift. She knew how to perform. But I also knew the truth. Beneath that polished exterior was a woman consumed by envy and obsession, and today the mask would finally slip. The proceedings began with Angela's lawyer painting a grim picture of me as a struggling widow, emotionally unstable and financially incapable of raising a child. They claimed Angela had stepped in as a support system and that removing her from the baby's life would cause irreparable harm. Listening to those words made my stomach twist. They weren't just attacking me as a mother, they were attacking my very identity. But when it was our turn, Marissa rose with calm confidence. She didn't need theatrics. She had the truth. "Your Honor," Marissa began, "this case is not about the child's welfare being at risk with her mother. This is about a woman, Angela, who has consistently overstepped boundaries, harassed my client, and attempted to manipulate her during the most vulnerable period of her life. She handed over a thick binder of evidence, call logs, emails, transcripts of messages, and my detailed journals documenting Angela's behavior. I watched the judge flip through the pages, his brows furrowing as he read Angela's words. Each chance encounter, each angry outburst, each attempt to undermine me, it was all there in black and white. Angela shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she still tried to keep her composure. Her lawyer objected, insisting these incidents were taken out of context. Then came the moment that changed everything. Marissa played an audio recording I had captured during Angela's doorstep tirade. Her voice, sharp and venomous, filled the courtroom. "You don't deserve her. You're weak, Sandra. Everyone sees it. Daniel saw it too. That's why he leaned on me. He knew you couldn't handle it." The words echoed through the silent courtroom like a slap. I glanced at the judge and saw his expression harden. There was no mistaking Angela's intent anymore. Angela's composure cracked. She jumped up, shouting, "That's not what I meant!" She twisted everything. "You don't understand. Daniel wanted me. He trusted me more than her." The outburst hung in the air like smoke. The courtroom was stunned. Even her lawyer looked horrified. Angela had just admitted everything we'd been trying to prove. This wasn't about the baby's welfare. It was about her obsession with Daniel and her need to take over his life. The judge called for order, but the damage was already done. In a matter of seconds, Angela had exposed herself. The polished mask she wore so carefully had shattered, revealing the raw envy underneath. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke with as much honesty as I could muster. My voice trembled at first, but the more I spoke, the stronger I felt. I told the court about Daniel, about his love for me, his dreams for our daughter, and the promises we had made together. I explained how Angela had offered support at first, but had quickly crossed boundaries, undermining me at every turn, and how her harassment had escalated to the point of fear. "I'm not perfect," I admitted. "I've made mistakes, and I'm still learning every day as a mother. But I love my daughter more than anything in this world. She is my reason for getting up in the morning, for pushing through my grief, for finding strength I didn't know I had. And I know in my heart, and I believe you can see it too, that no one can love her or protect her the way I can." By the time I finished, my eyes were wet with tears, but my voice was steady. I looked at the judge, at the faces of those in the courtroom, and I saw something shift. The story was no longer about Angela's polished performance. It was about the raw truth of a mother's love. In the days that followed, the court ordered a thorough evaluation. Social workers visited my home, observed me with my daughter, and interviewed those close to me. They also interviewed Angela, and while she tried to present her best self, the cracks in her facade were impossible to ignore. Her controlling behavior, her jealousy, her obsession with Daniel, it all became evident. When the final hearing came, the judge's decision was clear. Angela's petition for custody was denied in full. The restraining order was extended, and she was ordered to have no contact with me or my daughter. As the words were read aloud, I felt a wave of relief crash over me so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. After months of fear, anxiety, and endless battles, justice had been served. Angela sat in stunned silence, her face pale, her eyes filled with disbelief. She had fought so hard, manipulated so skillfully, and yet, in the end, the truth had prevailed. She had underestimated me, underestimated my love and determination. Leaving the courthouse that day, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The weight I had carried for so long was gone, replaced by something new: freedom. I wasn't just a widow anymore, clinging to survival. I was a fighter, a protector, and most importantly, a mother who had secured her daughter's future. Justice didn't erase the pain I had endured, but it gave me something more powerful: closure. And with that, I was ready to begin the next chapter of our lives. The weeks after the court's decision felt strangely quiet. For months, my life had been filled with constant tension: lawyer calls, evidence gathering, court hearings, late nights pacing the floor while my baby slept. When it all finally ended, the silence was almost overwhelming. But it wasn't the heavy silence of fear anymore. It was the soft, peaceful quiet of safety. I remember one morning in particular, just a few days after the ruling. I woke up to the sound of my daughter babbling in her crib. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting golden stripes across the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't wake up with a pit of dread in my stomach. I leaned over, scooped her into my arms, and just breathed her in. The warmth of her tiny body, the sweet scent of her hair, the sound of her laugh when I kissed her cheeks. She had no idea how much we had just been through, and maybe that was the best part. All the chaos, all the fear, all the courtroom drama, it hadn't stolen her innocence. She was still the same joyful, curious little soul, untouched by the darkness that had nearly consumed us. And I had protected that for her. That realization gave me more pride than anything else in my life. The first step in our healing was reclaiming normalcy. I reorganized the house, putting away boxes that had been sitting untouched since Daniel's passing. Each item I sorted through carried a memory: his favorite mug, the jacket he wore on our last trip together, the notes he left me on the fridge when he knew I was having a hard day. At first, handling them hurt, like reopening a wound. But slowly, I realized that holding on to these pieces of him didn't have to keep me trapped in grief. They could be anchors, reminders of the love we had shared and the strength he had left behind for me to carry forward. For a long time, I avoided looking at pictures of him. It was too painful. But one afternoon, as my daughter napped, I found myself flipping through an old photo album. There he was, Daniel with his crooked smile, his arm around me, his eyes shining with warmth. Instead of breaking down, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was gratitude. Gratitude that I had known him, loved him, and built a family with him. Gratitude that even though his life was cut short, he had left me with a gift so precious it gave me a reason to keep going: our daughter. Angela's absence was another layer of healing. At first, I caught myself flinching at every unexpected knock at the door or unknown number on my phone, expecting her shadow to reappear. But weeks turned into months, and there were no more surprise visits, no more threats, no more manipulation. The restraining order wasn't just a legal barrier, it was a wall between us and the chaos she had tried to unleash. Slowly, the fear faded, replaced by a steady confidence that she was no longer part of our story. Of course, healing wasn't linear. There were nights I lay awake wondering how things had gone so wrong between Angela and me. We had grown up together, we were sisters, She was supposed to be the person I could lean on, the one who would have my back in hard times. Instead, she had become my greatest enemy. That betrayal cut deep, and I knew it would leave scars. But I also knew I had a choice. I could let that bitterness fester, or I could choose to release it. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean excusing what she had done. It meant refusing to let her actions define me any longer. I realized that carrying hatred for Angela only tethered me to her, and I was ready to be free. So I began focusing on growth. I started small. Daily walks with the stroller, journaling before bed, reaching out to friends I had pulled away from during the chaos. People I thought had drifted away actually rushed back in when I let them. They brought meals, babysat, or simply listened as I unloaded months of pent-up emotion. I realized that I had been more loved and supported than I ever gave myself credit for. I also began therapy, something I had resisted at first. Admitting I needed help felt like weakness, but it turned out to be one of the bravest decisions I ever made. My therapist helped me process my grief for Daniel, the trauma of Angela's betrayal, and the exhaustion of single motherhood. Week by week, the fog lifted. I began to see myself not as a victim of circumstance, but as a survivor, a fighter, and eventually a woman capable of building a new future. One of the most healing things I did was start writing letters to Daniel. They weren't for anyone else to read, just me, pouring my heart out onto paper. I told him about our daughter's milestones, the funny faces she made, the way she loved music and clapped along to songs. I told him about my struggles too, the sleepless nights, the loneliness, the days I felt like I couldn't go on. It made me feel connected to him, as though I was still sharing our journey, even if he wasn't physically here. Over time, the tone of my letters shifted. They became less about grief and more about hope. I wrote about the garden I started in the backyard, how I painted the nursery a cheerful yellow, how I took our daughter to the park and watched her toddle across the grass for the first time. I wrote about my dreams for her, the lessons I wanted her to learn, the kind of mother I hoped to be. And slowly, I began to dream for myself again. I enrolled in a few online classes, something I had always put off because life was too busy. Education gave me a sense of direction, a reminder that I wasn't just a mother or a widow. I was still Sandra, a woman with ambitions and passions of her own. I didn't know exactly where it would lead, but it felt like the first step toward reclaiming my independence. The most beautiful part of this journey has been rediscovering joy in the little things. Watching my daughter chase bubbles in the yard, cooking a new recipe and actually enjoying the process instead of rushing through it. Sitting on the porch in the evening, sipping tea and feeling the breeze on my face. These weren't grand, sweeping changes, but they were pieces of a life worth living, one moment at a time. Looking back, I realize now that Daniel's death and Angela's betrayal could have destroyed me. For a while, I thought they would, but instead, they forged me into someone stronger. I am not the same woman I was before. I am more resilient, more aware of my own worth, and more determined to protect the life I've built. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes the people closest to us hurt us the most, but other times, the family we create, the friends who stand by us, the children we raise, the community we build, becomes the truest source of strength. Today, as I watch my daughter grow, I feel a sense of peace I never thought I'd find again. She is happy, healthy, and loved, and that's all that matters. I know Daniel would be proud, not just of her, but of me. Proud that I fought, that I didn't give up, that I refused to let Angela or anyone else rewrite our story. Our life isn't perfect, but it's ours. And every day I wake up grateful for the chance to live it. If you've stayed with me through this journey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Sharing this story wasn't easy, but I believe that sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones that bring the most healing, not just to us, but to those who hear them. Life tested me in ways I never imagined, but I came out stronger, wiser, and more determined to protect what truly matters. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you thought you could trust? How did you find the strength to rise above it? Please share your experiences in the comments. I read each one, and your words mean more to me than you know. If my story touched you, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find these stories and reminds me that I'm not alone in speaking out. And if you know someone who might be going through a similar struggle, share this video with them. They may find comfort in knowing they're not alone either. Thank you for listening, for supporting, and for being part of this community.